Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tenemos el placer de presentar la primera sesión de este Día Mundial del Pulmón Crítico. We have the opportunity to present the first session of the World Day of the Critical Lung. And this session is co-moderate. I am María Cruz Martín. I am intensivist, head of the ICU of 12 de octubre, Madrid. And we co-moderate with la doctora Francesca Rubolota. She is chair of the department of ICU University McGill in Canada, and the head of the director of the International Women in Intensive and Critical Care Network. In the next minutes, we speak or we can see a video and different interview with to speak about gender gap in intensive care units and anesthesiology. The first is a video with the presentation why is mentorship important from Silvia De Rosa and Denise Bartaglini.
Good morning, I'm Denise Battaglini from Genoa, Italy. Today I'm going to make an overview on the mentorship program. I will speak also on behalf of Dr. Silvia De Rosa, who is active leader of the mentorship program developed by the ESA-ECM, and I will speak about the iWin scientific mentoring program. What is mentoring? Mentoring is a reciprocal and collaborative relationship that most often occurs between a senior and a junior doctor for the purpose of the mentee's growth, learning and career development. Often the mentor and the mentees are internal to an organization like ESA-ECM or iWin, and there is an emphasis on organizational goals, culture, career goals, advice on professional development, and work-life balance. Mentoring is an important strategy to help recruit, retain, and develop critical care expertise and research projects. Mentoring is not only a mutual relationship between the mentor and the mentee, but aims at the development of a larger network of collaborators through involvement in the mentoring program. The fundamental principles of an innovative program in critical care include a relative advantage, which is the perception of change among the group, compatibility, which is the importance of values and past experiences, the simplicity, which is the ease of understanding the proposed change, the trialability, which is the degree to which innovation can be tested, and the observability, which is more discernible results contribute to how comprehensively the innovation will be adopted. What is peer mentoring? There are many ways to implement mentoring fundamentals, and one of the major methods is the peer mentoring. Peer mentoring means sharing expertise and ideas among all groups, which means mentees who share with mentors and mentors who share with other mentees and mentors. So the skills are shared and acquired in the network. There are many human factors in critical care which can improve the collaboration. For example, the recognition of skills and clinical expertise, the positive reinforcement for excellence in multidisciplinary networking, to identify the mentoring and perceptive experiences, to participate at local, regional, or national international conferences, to understand working conditions and to identify different personality needs, the recognition of critical care related stress impact and investigate ways to handle them, and the climate should be one of the reflection, openness, and communication. What is next? Today, next means next generation of intensive care of the ESA-ECM society. Over years, several attempts has been done to define who are the next members. The next committee members speak on behalf of trainees and young intensivists and helps shape the future of the society and of the discipline. In 2012, the ESA-ECM leadership highlighted the importance of including today's intensive care medicine trainees and young specialists to the society, since they will be the tomorrow's leaders of the discipline. With this goal in mind, the ESA-ECM formed the next committee of young ICM doctors who represented trainees and young doctors and chaired with the shaping of the organization and scientific progress of ICM. The next mentoring program is a strong research program which focuses on the following concepts: managing a productive academic career, nurturing and cultivating your mentees to become the next generation of research leaders, encouraging the professional development and establishment of a productive independent researcher. The next mentoring program is a strong program, and the aim of this program is to enhance the career opportunities of mentees by enhancing their research skill, the clinical skills, facilitating their professional development, and supporting the multicultural and diverse workforces. In line with this mission, a mentee is selected on the basis of research experience, academic and extracurricular experiences, diversity, and motivation needs for mentoring. The ESA-ECM Next Committee assesses the applications together with the ESA-ECM Research Committee and match the mentors and the mentees. The minimum requirement for the program is for the mentees and the mentors to attend orientation meetings at least twice a year, as well as the live mentor-mentee lunch. The extent of interaction can vary from phone calls, emails, internet meetings, face-to-face, and the ESA-ECM office, together with the next coordinator of the program, will evaluate monthly or every 6 months the relationship. The responsibilities of the mentor are to formalize the goals, objectives, and metrics of success with the mentee and meet periodically to review the progresses and attainment of goals, to provide feedbacks and encouragement and accomplishments, to evaluate the mentee's development during the program, and to be evaluated by the mentees with assessment of whether the mentor meets or exceeds the expectations. A mentor may coach, but a coach is not a mentor. Mentoring is relational, while coaching is functional. The responsibilities of the mentee are to take part in the mentor-mentee lunch meeting at least for 2 consecutive years, to initiate the contact and schedule meetings with the mentor, to prepare a specific agenda for each meeting, including the goals. Both the mentor and the mentee should take notes during the meeting to monitor the progress and make a follow-up on activity report, and to learn to evaluate the ideas and suggestions provided by the mentor. The first mentoring meeting has the aim to review and discuss the personal development plan and mentoring agreement with the mentor, to discuss the goals and expectation and work together to develop the steps to reach these goals using a timeline. They will be determined the frequency of meetings, at least 2 a year and 1 at lives, and they will suggest potential topics for future meetings, for example, research or clinical or career goals. These figures present the mentoring steps to achieve the goals. First, to assess the policy and goals, then to select the participants, matching of mentors and mentees based both on demographics and clinical preferences, to sign some documentation before starting about next mentoring evaluation form, checklist and worksheets, and a personal mentoring plan for each mentee. Among the documentation, there is the personal mentoring plan and mentoring agreement is a framework for the mentee to review the personal, professional, career goals and ESA-ACM society goals, and outlines the expectation for the mentoring program. And this personal mentoring plan and mentoring agreement section will be completed by the mentee prior to the first meeting, while the mentoring agreement section will be completed by both the mentor and the mentee during the meeting. The mentoring worksheet allows the mentor and the mentee to track the progress between periodic reviews. The worksheet provides a mechanism to assess the milestone, analyze gap, trace course correction, and discern a new direction, and will be utilized for periodic reviews. The next mentoring evaluation form is assess the mentee's experience during the mentoring. There are some questions asked concerning the fulfillment of the mentoring agreement, the success of the mentoring, and the evaluation of the mentor and the overall mentoring experience. Evaluation results will be used to assess the effectiveness of the program. The timings of all meetings are predefined. The first meeting is usually face-to-face at LICE, where the mentor and the mentee sign the personal development plan and mentoring agreement. A periodic review every 6 months, where the mentee and the mentor complete the mentoring worksheet and mentoring evaluation form and send the documentation to the mentoring program coordinator, and a final review at the end of the second year, where they complete another mentoring worksheet and a final summary, and this meeting is also with the program coordinator. According to the ESA-ACM mentoring policies, 10 mentees and mentors are selected each year, and this is the updated list of mentees and mentors who have started in October this year. What is IWIN? IWIN is Innovation, Diversity, Equality, Advocacy and Leadership. Is a network, an international network of women in intensive and critical care, with the aim of share similar challenges and face similar problems. What is the IWIN mentoring program? Is a program made up two parts, the mentorships and the sponsorship. The mentorship is the aspect of the program in which the mentor and the mentee discuss elements of life as a female doctor with the young mentee. And the mentors and the mentee can choose what they wish to discuss based on the mentor's personal experiences and the mentee's questions. The sponsorship is another part of this program. Women are over-mentored but under-sponsored, and it is for this reason that IWIN want to revolve around the sponsorship or a collaborating in a project. The IWIN mentees are medical students who are at the initial stage of their medical career, while the IWIN mentors are clinicians or academic doctors with experience in critical care. The time of the commitment is determined by the mentor and the mentee, but it's recommended at least one meeting every 1-2 months, and based on the needs and schedules of the mentor and the mentees. The guiding point for the mentorship program of iWin is to discuss topics about burnout, family and work balance management, women's leadership, ethics of research, soft skills, specific guidance in given current curriculum and aspirations, allyship, which means women supporting women, personal agenda, I need guidance on, and options, other pre-readings or assignments. There is a recommend for the mentee 1 hour a week to include a literature review, talking about experiences, reflections, and analyze other things of the development of the program. So I have finished my talk. I believe that mentoring could be essential for both career development, family work balance, and to reach life goals by the mentee. But it is useful for the mentor also to acquire new perspective and to stimulate personal growth. Thank you.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon, and I am so happy and privileged that I am a part of this session, and we will talk about role of Gender Equity Committee within European Society of Anesthesia and Intensive Care, and let's say like gender bias, no way. I have no conflicts of interest for this talk. However, I am chair of Gender Equity Committee, and I am a feminist with a great belief in fairness. And the objective of this talk will be to discuss a little bit between no way and no way, different two meanings. First of all, no way, meaning definitely we will not let something happen and we will just stop something from happening. And the other thing is that the other no way meaning is that we are actually in surprise. We simply don't believe that something exists, such as, for example, gender inequity. And first of all, European Society of Anesthesia Intensive Care should mirror the anesthesia workforce in Europe. However, we have a lack of systematical and comparable data on workforce, and this is rather old analysis, another rather old survey. We may just assume how much it has changed, particularly after this pandemic crisis. And what we can see here, if we just focus here, there are three types of or groups of country: EU, new EU country, and EU candidates. And we can see that female doctors and female anesthetists and intensivists were fewer in European Union or let's say more developed countries. We may just assume why is that? Maybe because of a socialistic background and different legislation in some European countries. And of course, there is an increase in female trainees. So we may just assume that there will be increase in female doctors in anesthesia and intensive care, specialists as well. And of course, even then, it was a huge problem with the migration and shortage of anesthesia workforce. And we can see here what is happening within European society itself. And on this slide, we can see the representation of women during the years. And we can see very low point during 2018 and 2019, where only in scientific committees, there were only 6% of members or appointed positions that were female. Also with speakers, these are speakers on focus meetings, when we can see there is a huge underrepresentation of women, and also speakers within let me just something is blocked now with the presentation, but we will move quickly to another slide, and we will see that there is oh, I'm sorry, now there is some craziness here. Okay, Anyway, we can see that speakers within Euroanesthesia women were also underrepresented. However, this year there was almost equal number of men and women presenters. And if we analyze grants, scientific research grants that were allocated to different applicants, we can see here that the women were also underrepresented even as applicants. So fewer women were applying for grants, research grants, and we see as soon as the number increases, there are of course more chances that women will even get it one. And we see that it's not probably the problem with allocating grants to women, but it's probably more, let's say, more problematic how many women do apply. And we see this year actually there is a winner and more female applicants for the largest grant BGA that also woman won. And around that time, when there was a notice of, let's say, a terrible underrepresentation of women within European society, there was a survey that was performed that was published in 2020, and it was about the attitudes and barriers to career advancement in anesthesia, and equal number or comparable number of women and men responded on this survey, and what was seen is that both women and men aspire for leadership in career, and there are some barriers, but it seems that women are affected more. And here we can see that, for example, there is no problem within the family, with younger women and men actually being more towards gender equity within the family. And also millennials, they tend to have and to think more about professional life balance, and they don't want to be overwhelmed with the workload. However, what is different between men and women are these yellow stars, saying that women think that they have a lack of education within leadership, that they have a lack of education within research background, and that they actually miss self-confidence and women role models. So we may assume that these are probably the places of intervention which may improve the situation on the field. So in 2020, Gender Equity Committee was appointed within European Society of Anesthesia and Intensive Care to inspire a culture of change towards equality, so that all anesthesia can reach their professional goals, with idea to address systemical bias within the European society, if there are some. However, it is announced that it will be dismissed for many reasons in next year. And one of the reasons is that numbers look good now. And I am very concerned with these decisions, because quotas are simply not the solution for equality, because this is just a targeted tool and a way of monitoring gender inequity within some professional and academic environment. However, we can still see that some visible women probably will not adopt policies favoring gender equity, and also elected women tend to have still be subjected to bias, and they have increased mental burden and work-life balance, and a lot, let's say, sexistic behavior. And also they are very often appointed to the position of hitting the class of ceiling, and women who benefit most are already an elite. So this is just one small part of monitoring gender equity. So numbers cannot be good enough so that we can say that we have solved the problem. And also what is evidence-based right now, although there are very few evidence-based data on gender equity and how to address it, is that usually people overemphasize quantity. So we usually like to look only numbers because that's the easiest thing to address to. And instead of fixing system, we tend to fix women. And sometimes we are over optimistic when we see some positive movements. The other thing is that there are also some interventions that should be very strictly addressed, and that are systematic changes, meaning that all male panels should be prohibited, and also senior leaders should be very accountable and, let's say, in a way very dedicated towards gender equity. And research funding should be allocated according to transparent gender equity policies. So this also counts for European Society of Anesthesia Intensive Care. We can just hope that the society will be very strict in following at least some of the measures, and that if we don't have a committee, and if we will not have a committee, let's say that we will have a very good monitors that will raise attention on any gender inequality, which I am sure are still present. And instead of the conclusion, let's just focus on what Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. She said when she was asked when will there be enough women in Supreme Court, and she said when there are 9, meaning all of them. And people are shocked, but there have been 9 men and nobody's ever raised a question about that. So numbers can be seen in different ways, and we have to be sure that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. So I hope that European society will have the strength and dedication to support women and gender equity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning. My name is Joanna Bergeres-Tilita, and I'm an anesthesiologist and intensivist in Bern, Switzerland. I would like to thank Dr. Pablo Cardinal and Professor Francesca Robolotta for the invitation to speak here today. I'm going to bring you 2 original papers in gender equity, which I co-authored with my colleague from Slovenia, Marko Zdravkovic. So regarding gender equity, as you may know, gender diversity in decision-making and participation in the workforce results in stronger economies, more productive institutions, and more stable governance. Gender parity also maximizes academic productivity, and peer-reviewed publications with gender diverse authors receive more citations than publications produced by single gender authorship team. Moreover, it has been showed that gender diverse groups collaborate more effectively and exhibit higher collective intelligence. In medicine, gender diverse teams have even a direct effect on patient outcomes. For example, a 2018 study cited here below showed that female patients with acute myocardial infarction had higher mortality when treated by a male doctor than when treated by a female doctor. And this effect was attenuated when the male doctors had more female colleagues and patients. Not to mention another study from Canada published in the JAMA involving 3,000 surgeons and more than 1 million patients that showed that women were 15% more liable to suffer a bad outcome and 32% more likely to die when a man rather than a woman carried out the surgery. So addressing the current gender gap in medicine will improve working conditions for all physicians, contributing to a more stable workforce. But unfortunately, there is no magic pill, and research is still lacking regarding the effective strategies to reduce discrimination. And this is what we wanted to know in this 2020 publication that came out before the pandemic. So we gathered data on more than 10,000 acute care physicians worldwide, and we aimed to include data from 148 countries with a good proportion of respondents, around 50-50 women versus men. And we found, similar to other studies, that women were more likely to be discriminated against and mistreated in the workplace, and that being a woman was a clear disadvantage in reaching a leadership or investigative position. Importantly, as anesthesiologists, women were less likely to have children and therefore to raise a family compared to men.
We also analyzed the open-ended replies using a qualitative methodology, and after thematic analysis, we decided to group answers according to complexity levels, worth mentioning here. At the most basic and central level, participants indicated that one of the most important aspects to bring about the neutralization of inequality is actually to set an example. And this implies being attentive and reporting equality situations, supporting colleagues to promote a good professional environment in which everyone has the same opportunity. On an institutional level, there were some measures that were mentioned, which include both equality measures, namely concerning social indicators, that is, that the necessary opportunities are equal for both genders, that pay gap and working conditions are equal for both. And on the other hand, they also suggested measures of equity, that is, of social justice, in which there is added protection for the period of pregnancy, maternity, and returning to work after birth. The second study I bring here is on regulations of anesthesiology training programs that further addresses this topic of family-friendly practices during training. This has been recently accepted in the EJA, and hopefully it will be published soon. In short, this is the first descriptive study reporting on the characteristics of anesthesiology training programs across Europe, focusing on welfare practices. And with this study, we aimed to describe the work regulations of anesthesiology training programs and working conditions during the child rearing period, by which we did a cross-sectional survey and used a questionnaire to gather information on several countries, particularly by asking the NASC representatives of the European Society of Anesthesiology and Intensive Care. Our main outcome measures included basic specialist training working conditions, gender-related data, work regulations when returned to work after childbirth, and some policies against discrimination during training. We had a median proportion of female trainees of 60%, which is much more than in other Western countries, being the highest proportion in Montenegro, with almost 90% of residents being female, and Bosnia-Herzegovina with almost 80% of residents being female. In 11 countries, there were specific training programs for leadership skills, and in 2 of them, particularly Denmark and Sweden, specific training in leadership skills for females. And we also found that the proportion of female trainees was negatively correlated with the GDP per capita. So in countries with lower GDPs, there was a higher proportion of female residents in training. In 8 countries, trainees legally worked fewer hours during pregnancy comparing to their non-pregnant counterparts. Pregnant trainees could be exempted from on-call shifts in several countries, including Belgium, Bosnia, France, Italy, Kosovo, Moldova, North Macedonia, Serbia, and Slovakia. But in the remaining countries, they could only ask to be exempted by presenting a doctor's declaration. Pregnant trainees were legally excused from night shifts at 24 weeks in median, and they could not be fired during pregnancy across all countries in Europe. Returning to work after pregnancy also seemed to be challenging for trainees, with only half of the participating countries allowing for part-time work after birth, 22 countries accommodating reduced working hours, and only 26 relieving mothers from working night shifts. Overall, only a few countries, these ones in yellow, offered the 3 possibilities to return after childbirth. Regarding breastfeeding in the workplace, this was very interesting. Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Sweden, and the UK do not have formal legal dispositions for breastfeeding in the workplace. However, on the other hand, despite having legal regulations, Albania, Bosnia, Cyprus, Georgia, Hungary, Kosovo, Lithuania, Montenegro, and Slovakia reported that breastfeeding during specialist training does not occur, although there are legal regulations protecting for it, because they usually do not have facilities in the hospitals that allow women to breastfeed. And finally, regarding zero tolerance, well, probably the most important step that one can take is to have zero tolerance for discrimination. This zero tolerance approach may include issuing guidelines and enforcing accountability. However, if we look at how many anesthesia societies in Europe have put this into practice, the results are more disappointing. We only have 6 intensive care societies, while the Scandinavian is joint venture, so to speak, have issued gender equity statements. So finally, there is a large limitation to studies on gender equity, including these 2 that I presented to you. Gender equity can only be investigated based on social research methodology. And this is so far regarded as lesser science. So projects regarding gender equity in medicine end up being rejected in anesthesia journals and published in journals more focused in social sciences, which are less read by anesthesiologists. So a part of changing the mindset will also include publishing more qualitative analysis papers, which are a validated methodology. So thank you so much for your attention. And now back to Francesca.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Pablo and Dr. Rubalota for giving me this opportunity and congratulate the entire team of the World Day of Critical Lung for organizing this meeting. I will be speaking on gender healthcare inequalities. I hope you can hear me and see me. Thank you. So first, just to speak a bit about global health or health populations in the global context, it seems to transcend borders, eliminating inequalities in disease prevention and healthcare worldwide. Now, in 2000, the United Nations Summit, they had declared 8 developmental goals, and these were identified to be eradicated by 2015. And in this UN Summit, maternal mortality, which is, of course, an important indicator of women's health, was looked at, and this decreased by 44% from 1990 compared to 2000, as in 2015. However, subsequently, as of 2017, it was seen that more than 800 women are still dying daily from preventable causes related to pregnancy and childbirth. Now, let's try to understand these differences about gender inequality, inequity. Now, when we say sex, it's genetic, and we're referring to the differences between societies. However, gender refers to socially construed roles that are influenced by ethnicity, culture, and socioeconomic environment. Inequality simply refers to the unequal distribution of health or health resources. And when you say inequity, it refers to unfair, avoidable differences arising from, for example, from cultural exclusion. So it's really important for us to understand these terms, and the influence of gender on disease is increasingly being recognized as an important factor in global health inequality and inequity. So when we talk about gender health inequality, we're talking about gender health related inequalities because of the differences between men and women, which empower one over the other. Essentially, what could happen is one gender could have more benefits than the other in their healthcare solely because they belong to that gender. And these kind of healthcare inequalities, of course, result in gender healthcare inequities. Now, when you talk about global healthcare inequity in women, recently I wrote this review along with some of my colleagues in anesthesia, and gave me the opportunity to look at review a lot of literature. And in fact, it was quite an eye-opener to look at the global healthcare inequities in women. And I'd like to allude to some of them. So when we look at, say, maternal mortality in the last 2 years, so in the last 2 decades, the main cause of morbidity and mortality has actually shifted from infectious disease and reproductive health to more of non-communicable disease, unlike what people think. Now, even in Africa, women's deaths due to non-communicable diseases has risen from 24% in 2000 to almost 39% in 2019. And the World Health Organization estimates that for 2019, just over 19 million deaths were attributed to non-communicable disease. So it's not just maternal health, but also a rise in non-communicable diseases among women. And these can be a leading cause of disability adjusted life years for women. So it's not only about immediate healthcare, but also the long-term effects. And the World Health Organization has emphasized post the 2015 framework that I talked about, a need to move towards more life care, health approach to for women. Now, when we talk about, global health, it is really an interplay between gender and the poverty divide, and we can't really deny that. Globally, women suffer healthcare inequalities, leading to excess mortality, not only during childbirth, but in all periods of life. And women of lower socioeconomic status are the highest at risk, and at every age group and in every part of the world. And there are women who are most likely to present for medical care late. They present usually with long-standing yet undiagnosed medical conditions, and they tend to suffer more complications, and these are related to the poverty divide. And women with low levels of education, women members of minority groups, and migrant women, these should raise a red flag among every healthcare workers, because these are the ones who are most vulnerable to be affected by the gender inequalities. Now, since we talked about pregnancy, let's look at pregnancy and the peripartum period. Now, lower socioeconomic status leads to reduction in the quality of antenatal care that is received, and this, of course, leads to higher complication. There's also a global disparity in the timely access to antenatal care, delayed referrals, and even, patients who are at high risk. Now, every patient has a right to adequate analgesia during labor and delivery, and this is, as we know, unequal worldwide. Inequity in their knowledge and attitudes also is present, and there's lack of access to family planning, birth control, abortions, even HIV treatment, teenage pregnancies, and sex education. So another thing that's very important to note is that the attitude of the healthcare workers also sometimes deters women from seeking help. So despite the glowing recognition that sometimes, they could be abusive with these women, disrespectful during childbirth, and there's no consensus on how to really define these measures in the women in the peripartum period. So in an ideal world, of course, every delivery should be accompanied by a medical professional in environment which is safe and which is equipped to handle complications. But we know that this is far from the reality. And if you look at, this is the meta-analysis on maternal mortality in low middle income countries, and you can see that the risk of anesthesia in these regions accounted for 2.8% of the maternal deaths and 3.5% of direct maternal deaths, 13.8% of deaths after cesarean section. So even exposure to general anesthesia has increased the risk compared with just giving neuroaxial blockade, and with the rates being nearly double when it is managed by non-physician anesthetists, and emphasizing the importance of having trained personnel to look after these women across the globe that can become a challenge in low middle income countries. Now, what's very important is, like I said, often when we talk about maternal health, we just talk about, women's health, we talk about maternal health. But a woman, if you see, spends less than 5 years of her life being pregnant and more than 20 years of her life being middle-aged or older. So that is why, focusing solely on childbearing women, it symbolizes the traditional devaluation of women who are outside the childbearing age, and also of those women who don't have children. So it also underplays the importance of the other coexisting diseases during pregnancy, such as, conditions like gestational diabetes, pregnancy-induced hypertension, and other long-term diseases that have long-term effects on life. Now, when you talk about access to healthcare, in many societies, the access to healthcare itself is heavily biased by sex and gender. And there are many factors, culturally, socially, that prevent women from being made, get the same healthcare choices as men. And these are frequently overlooked across the globe. And this situation is undoubtedly worse in low middle income countries, where the social and cultural hurdles faced by women accessing affordable healthcare are compounded even more by poverty and poor infrastructure. Now, some examples, if you look there, we have data to suggest that cardiovascular disease is increasingly recognized in women. Even in high income countries, there are delays in women seeking medical care and long-term frames and diagnosis, even in the severity of cardiac disease in women as compared to men. If you look at general delay in access to treatment, it is likely to be again compounded by low middle income countries, and there is low use of secondary prevention for cardiovascular disease, especially among women. So there is this gender linked delay in presentation, diagnosis, and this has been seen not only for cardiovascular disease, but also with stroke, cancer, and also women who are presenting with chest pain. So if you look at the frequency, other examples, there is data to suggest that patients undergoing dialysis, they actually spend longer time with a central venous catheter as likely to transition to a permanent access as compared to men. So we actually have data to suggest this. Now, the other problem is when women present with acute abdomen, they present later than men, and are often, because the first thing is they're referred to gynecologists. So often this you can miss life-threatening conditions and non-obstetric causes. So here's another example example, where gender plays a role in the delay. And if you look at women from low socioeconomic countries, they are more susceptible to depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. Furthermore, it can also be seen that across lifestyle, impacting not only just the age of the women, but also its impact on a family and social cultural structure. And there's also a lot of vulnerability, social stigma, lack of resources, especially in low resource poor settings. And this makes the burden on the women particularly acute. If you look at pain and analgesia, also there is differences. Now, high income countries are usually grappling with the problem of the opioid epidemic. But in contrast to this, if you say 80% of the population across the globe is deprived of access to modern and severe pain medicine, basic analgesics, even like morphine, are hard to procure in as high as 150 countries. And there are both sex and gender differences related to, the experience with pain, with clinical research clearly demonstrating that women have a low threshold, their tolerance to pain, less response to analgesics, and they are at an increased risk or post-operative pain and developing chronic pain. So they need special attention to be paid to. If you look at surgery and anesthesia, now this is again an issue because surgical diseases, as we know, account for 30% of the global burden of disease, and 70% of the global population even today lacks access to safe anesthesia and surgical care. Now, in the last decade, World Health Organization has made a special global effort to increase the safety of surgery and medically provided anesthetic care that is a key component to improved outcomes following surgery globally. And in organizations like WFSA, as well as advocacy groups, they have, championed for minimum safety standards and improving the capacity to implement these standards, various organizations like Lifebox, Safe Africa. However, it's really important for us in training that we must realize that in the perioperative period and critical care and anesthesiology and pain management, these are areas in which physicians work, and we tend to cut across, various group of patients and, sort of situations where sex-linked differences have actually resulted in substantial differences for women. So we have to be especially sensitive to this, especially in the perioperative period and in the intensive care unit. So I'd just like to end with my take-home message that we have come a long way, of course, in recognizing, health is a global issue, but the most important next steps would be for all those involved in women's health, for medical professions, to policymakers, to recognize that there is a gender inequality in global health, and this has a potential not only to lead to health benefits if there's equity, but also to social and economical gains. And we have to recognize as physicians that women of low level education, women members of minority groups, migrant women, these should raise flags wherever we are working, because these are the ones who are most vulnerable to global healthcare inequalities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I think we have 5 minutes for discussion. And so first of all, I wish to ask if you have any specific questions and in the panel of the public. And so we are lucky today because I think we have representation of almost all the globe, presidents of society, chairs of committees. So in the last 5 minutes, I just ask you, what's your vision and strategy? Just each of you one last words of hope and progress. I don't know, should we start with Volka, Professor Neskovic? And then we go to Maria Cruz and then Sheila, maybe. Would it be okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Francesca, very much again for this chance to be reunited again on such, let's say, a prominent meeting, but with women that are dedicated to gender equity and, let's say, women power. I think that we still miss the point of inequity and or equity, and that there is still a lot that we have to do. And I am so happy that we had this wonderful talk from Sheila and also from Joanna, where we can see that there are still so much social contributors that affect professional representation of women. We still cannot overcome many of the social challenges, and also, as I said, for European society, we still have women that would like to be professionally visible, but coming from a poorer country with lower economical possibilities, and we expect them to be in equal race with people coming, or women coming from different countries. So I think it's raising the awareness and encouraging women that they can succeed, and that at the end of the day, also what many women say is a lack of role models of successful women. We have a huge responsibility to really lead and to encourage and to hope that time will bring us finally this better world where women will be more, let's say, more seen as leaders than up to now. So I think it's very important that we have gender equity sessions on every important meeting, and I think we should continue with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Should we see what Sheila or Maria Cruz says about their vision within their society, being both president? Who goes first, Maria Cruz or Sheila?
Thank you, Francesca. For me, it's very important sessions like this in a important day like this, no? The Federation, Pan-American American Federation, has worked in this issue, and the 8th of March of 22, we have a position paper about gender gap, but I think we do not blah blah blah, do something, little things, but every day work in this line and share the experience and the initiative between different societies and different organizations can give us power to change the things. Sessions like this and listen, share the experience of your countries is very important for all the world. Thank you very much, Francesca.
Thank you, Maria Cruz. You're the co-chair. And then Sheila, what's your target and what's your strategy within the society and your vision for the future, if you want to make a last comment? Are you still there, Sheila? Oh, we lost you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So
yes.
First of all, thank you. I think these kind of meetings are extremely important to have, because, you know, a lot of people are not even aware, you know, of a lot of situations. And I think when you have these kind of sessions in the meetings, the first important thing is to spread awareness about the basic inequities and inequalities. And secondly, even when there is awareness, you know, people don't acknowledge that it's a problem. So I think unless you acknowledge that there is a problem, you can't take steps in the right direction. So I think the second step, you know, so we have a long way to go, really. And there's a wide variation in where we are across the globe. So I think acknowledging that there is a problem and then working towards it would be the first step. But especially on the topic that I spoke about global health, I mean, one would not even think that inequalities when I speak to some people. So I think we should be very, you know, across the globe, not only in low middle income countries, but we should be very aware and have a red flag, you know, about which are the vulnerable groups. And we need to be careful that these patients are protected in our setting. And as anesthesiologists, as intensivists, we really cut across many areas, especially anesthesiologists in the perioperative period. So we are in the perfect position to pick up these kind of situations and alert the right individuals. So I think we have a very important role to play, not only socially, but as physicians in our healthcare setting, you know, to, you know, fill this gap with gender inequalities.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And just to mention Denise Battaglini and Silvia De Rosa that are doing an amazing work with mentoring. What I think they said is really important to point out is that women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. So I think one of the, but it's a small difference, but it's crucial, because one of the small advice I wish to give to everyone who's participating to this meeting is sponsor someone. If you are busy, if you cannot write a chapter, if you cannot review that article that is really boring for you, or if you cannot join that session, or if you can have someone in the session, sponsor a younger colleague. And if you may, suggest a woman, because as presented by Volka, we do not propose ourselves. So we need that extra self-esteem and encouragement that might come from a senior person. So it's true, we need role models, but sometimes a little bit of help by a sponsor. So Denise Battaglini and Silvia are working very hard with this mentorship program for critical care doctor in the European Society. And IWIN is working with a new mentorship program that is looking at medical students. So we believe that if we can get a student to publish even an abstract, they might start enjoying participating into the research world and then grow with that kind of ambition that is not always the case. And also, I thank so much all of you for participating in this call, because as you said, it's important to increase awareness and to create networking opportunities such as the one today and the one that we hope to have in June, the 30th of June 2023 in Catania. It is important to have the opportunity to confront and to create new structure and new models within the conference. We have a virtual conference today, but if we move to face-to-face conference, once again, I want to encourage you that are president to promote childcare and to promote a family-friendly environment to meetings instead of a male-dominated type of setting. So these are small things, but I believe can make a big difference. And I want also to stress how important it is that you said that healthcare professionals have gender inequalities and families and patients have gender inequalities. So there's two streams here, two big problems that we need to face. So I think with that, I have not much more to add. I don't know whether Maria Cruz had anything else to add, but or any of you wants to make any final comments. But I think this was an extraordinary, interesting session, and it was full of good idea for the future. Maria Cruz, if you have no more comments, I'll let you finish.
No, thank you very much, Francesca. We have no time. Thank you very much for all the people, and thank you very much for the speakers. And nice to meet you. I'll see you early. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sheila, something? Thank you. Hi, Volka. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. Yes, thank you. Bye.
You bye.
I hope to see you in June in Catania next year. Bye.
I hope it.